Yes, instructions from the spirits. So as we know, this the way the format of this book is Kardec selected pieces of the gospel of the four books that compose the gospel, the ones that has primarily and only moral teachings, and Kardec gives the, of course, guided by the Spirit, inspired by the Spirit, he gives his explanations of those passages of the Gospel, and then he complements his own instructions with instructions from the spirits. And usually are the spirits who have some kind of, of involvement directly with those parts of the Gospel. Someone who has some kind of authority to speak on those matters, right? Um, it's always good to know a little bit about who had left those masters behind, so it helps us. And most of the time we don't, right? I think it's one thing that we should do, a quick research on who is this, who is that. But Simeon, we kind of remember because he's in the book 2,000 years ago. And if you recall, is the apostle of Samaria, is the one who had some political, of course, didn't go back to the book, but some political influence at the time of Christ. He had the opportunity actually to listen to the Sermon of the Mountain, become, of course, at that time, couldn't say become a Christian because there was no Christianity per se at that time, but become somewhat of a follower and actually try to intervene with the judgment of Pontius Pilatus. Was success, of course, unsuccessful, and after that was start having some more followers of Christ in his house, and end up being one of the first martyr that was basically killed by the Roman soldiers when he was hiding some of the women that was practicing Christianity, if you can say that at that time, in that place. So if you remember, if I read 2,000 years ago, you remember the name Simeon. And of course, he's an authority to speak about forgiveness because him himself was murdered by the soldiers. And not only that, when some of his friends come at his house and witness his being, what's the word? He's been injured by the soldiers. They kind of pretended they did not know him, just like most of the apostles rejected Christ, including Peter at that time. And he was, of course, he is now, of course, a personality to speak about forgiveness for those reasons. And I keep thinking, my own thinking here, someone that at that time, 2,000 years ago, someone with some political power with the Roman Empire was able to accept and follow Christ's new paradigm. Would imagine it's supposed to be highly evolved. 2000, if 2,000 years ago he was already able to convert, so to say, to follow this new paradigm, and we are still struggling so hard 2,000 years ago to do it, would imagine that this spirit now can be considered, should be considered a highly evolved spirit. Having said that, it's just a comment that perhaps helps us to put even more greater value of what we're about to read right now. Who's going to do the reading?
Okay, I'll read. Elmo.
But it's very, at least for my thing, it's very low sound. I don't know if it is for everybody else right now.
Okay, I hope. You hear me now?
Oh yeah, loud and clear.
Okay. Okay. Okay, forgiveness of injuries. How many times should I forgive my fellow human being? You should forgive him, her, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. This is one of those words of Jesus that should strike your mind the most and speak the highest to your heart. Bring these words of mercy closer to the prayer, so simple, so summarized, and so great in its aspirations that Jesus has given to his disciples. And you will always encounter the same thought. Jesus, the just man per excellence, answers Peter, you will forgive, but without limits. You will forgive each offense as often as the offense is done to you. You will teach your brothers and sisters this self forgetfulness, which makes one immune to attack, bad practices, and injuries. Once you become meek and humble of heart, never quantifying your indulgence, you will finally do what you want our Heavenly Parent to do for you. Often does God not have to forgive you? And does it count the number of times its forgiveness comes down to erase your faults? So listen carefully to this response from Jesus. And like Peter, apply it to yourselves. Forgive, be indulgent, be charitable, generous, even lavish with your love. Give, for the Lord will give you back. Forgive, because the Lord will forgive you. Lower yourself, for the Lord will elevate you. Humble yourself, for the Lord will make you sit on its right hand. Dearly beloved, go study and comment on these words which I address to you on behalf of the one who, from the height of celestial splendors, always looks toward you and continues with love the thankless task which he started 18 centuries ago. So forgive your brothers and sisters as you yourselves need to be forgiven. If their actions were personally prejudicial to you, this is one more reason to be indulgent, because of the merit of forgiveness is proportionate to the severity of the evil. There would be no need for forgiveness of the wrongs and injuries done by your brothers and sisters if they had only caused you minor injuries. Spiritist, never forget that in words as well as in actions, forgiveness of injuries must not be an empty saying. If you call yourself spiritist, then act as spiritist. Forget the harm that has been done to you and think only of one thing, namely the good that you can do. Whoever has taken this path must not depart from it, even in thought, for you are responsible for your thoughts, which are known by God. Therefore, see that they are stripped of any feelings of resentment, for God knows what lies at the bottom of everyone's heart. Blessed are those who can fall asleep each evening saying, I hold nothing against my neighbor. Simon Young, 1862.
Okay, thanks, Horida.
You're welcome.
So forgiveness of the injuries, I think the original before is to be forgiveness of the offenses. Um, I do like the offenses better because it's, to me, it's more generic. It's anything that is done to us that somewhat affects us in a negative way, which may be physical, may be emotional, it may be um, in relationship to our workplace. But um, the relationship of the offenses, the way you receive it, is directly related to our pride. The more prideful we are, the more painful anything that may be considered offensive will affect us the more. The least prideful we are, the less it will affect us. If you think, not even putting Jesus, because talking about the perfect spirit here, but let's think of someone like Francisco Cândido Xavier, when he was very active and become a public person by the nature of his work, not that was seeking any kind of celebrity, seeking to become famous, but anyone who does that kind of work, who produces so much, who will catch the attention of the public. And once we catch the attention of the public, there are those who will like and those who will not dislike. And Francisco Xavier became a public person and was attacked viciously. Not only his work, but he personally. All kinds of offensive and truly false statements, fake news, right, against him towards his sexuality, towards his pretending to be a medium that was all falsehood, that he was trying to gain something out of his mediumship of the work he was doing. You never heard that he ever say anything aggressive, any kind of self-defense statement for anything, all the attacks that he received. Called him, you know, about his personal life or his work. Never ever said one word um, to defend himself because he never felt attacked. And he never felt attacked because he had one thing, or he did not have one thing that makes us feel attacked, with pride. He was able to keep his humbleness as his armor of protection, so to say. So it could not affect him. It could not attack. He could say anything that you want to say about him that would not affect him because he was a truly humble individual. So most of us, we feel offended, we feel attacked, and the way we feel that is because of our pride. Simple example: if you commit a mistake at work, everybody works, everybody commits mistakes, and the boss comes in the office in closed doors and have a conversation about you and about that mistake. You accept the mistake, you take whatever it's take because you recognize that you made a mistake. If the boss instead go in the middle of the hallway and calls you and say out loud in front of all your co-workers and past buyers and everything and say the same things, you feel offended. Or at least let's put me, so I'll not put sentiments in your cards. I'll feel offended. I'll feel that the boss has something against me, or I feel that the boss is trying to hurt me. Saying absolutely the same words, the same things. One was in private, the other one was in public. Because I have too much pride to share that mistake and the consequences of that mistake with everyone else. If I am free of pride, I would take both of the same way. I would not allow the fact that is being spoken in public affect me at all. Having said that, of course, the boss is lack of indulgence, right? The boss, if was more indulgent, would perform the correction of mistake in the right way, would address the problem as a means to educate me, and would do in privacy to protect exactly what that I lack, what that I have in excess, my pride. That I would get hurt because of my pride, not because of the mistake itself that I recognize, not because of the consequences of the mistake that I accept as being part of the job, so to say. But once it put in out there, it affects my pride. So the more prideful we are, the more we feel offended. The more prideful we are, we allow the attack of others permeates us and hurts us. And very often when we are hurt, we feel the necessity to hurt back, which is also a product of pride. Very often you contra-react in an action of pride because I cannot accept someone to tell this to me, especially in public. I have my pride, I have my honor, I have to defend it. And we lower ourselves to the level of the aggressor out of pride. So the difficulty of exercising forgiveness is directly related with the amount of pride that we still carry within us.
Mm.
So Christ suggests that no, we need to forgive not only seven, but 7 times 7 for each of the offenses. Okay? So we will forgive, but without limits. And that's key over here, without limits. Okay? Do you forgive each offense as often as the offense is done to you? We will teach your brothers and sisters this is self-forgetfulness, which makes one immune to attack, but bad practice and injuries. Immune to attack. Once I'm deprived of pride, I become immune to attack, and that's what made me think of Francisco Cândido Xavier. He seems to be immune of all the bombardment of negative energies that was thrown at him consistently could not affect him because he was free of pride. Now, this is an effect, right? Forgive without limits is that effect. So there is a cause behind that, and the cause is one over here. Once you become meek and humble of heart, never quantifying your indulgence, you will finally do what you want our heavenly parent to do for you. So that's the cause. Once you become meek and humble of heart. And if you remember, meek and humble precedes this chapter, right? That you already studied in this book. So you need to reach that level of meekness, of humbleness, to be able to forgive without limits, which is, again, is an armor of protection, because now the world will be jumping on your back, but it will not affect you because you are fully protected. And we will do what we say in our Lord's Prayer, as we spoke before as well. We will forgive just the same way that we like our Father to forgive us. Um, I like when he says over here also, so listen carefully to this response from Jesus, and like Peter, apply it to yourselves.
Mm.
Forgive, be indulgent, be charitable, generous, even lavish with your love. I think this even lavish with the love is what Christ suggests was also. Love your enemies. Forgive your enemies. Because it's very easy to love those who are like us, who think like us, to vote like us, especially this time of so much division. that we seem to be placing ourselves in different boxes, and those boxes seems to getting farther and farther away from one another. If we do not exercise forgiveness and meekness, we will not be able to get out of those boxes, and we start to be judgmental. We start to be aggressive to the other boxes. So this is so important for us today. Be lavish with your love, and to me that implies over here directly to forgive, to love your enemies. And of course, we spoke about enemies in the past, is that we should not have enemies. But if others sees us as enemies, we will forgive and love them as well. Another thing that I take over here is, so forgive your brothers and sisters as you yourselves need to be forgiven. If their actions were personally prejudicial to you, this is one more reason to be indulgent, because the merit of forgiveness is proportionate to the severity of the evil. I have a little bit of problem with that. Is that I don't think that no God is that giving people medals, right? Your forgiveness deserves a bronze medal. You deserves a better. You get a silver medal, and that is the top of forgiveness, because you forgive someone who really did something really bad to you. I'll give a gold medal. And again, it's the proportion of my hurt is directly related to my pride and to my lack of faith in everything that we're reading, everything that we're doing here, my lack of faith in the teachings of Christ. Because if you have faith in the teachings of Christ, in association with be less prideful, we would be able to forgive even the greatest of the offenses. And of course, we know, taking consideration things that happens to us is extremely difficult, right? Someone comes to your house and do something horrible to your family and leave you behind after murdering all your loved ones. It's not easy to apply the teachings of Christ here and know and be forgiving and be indulgent. Everyone knows that, and that's why, to me, when we read over here, blessed are those who can fall asleep each evening saying, I hold nothing against my neighbor. I also that also are the ones who are able to go back to sleep and says, and speaking with God in prayer says, Father, I haven't yet emptied my heart of all the resentment, but I'm working on it. I'm in that process. I do believe that in the teachings of Christ, that is indeed the teachings that liberates us from suffering, that liberates us from pain. I am in that process. I cannot say that I have my heart is empty or any resentment that I hold nothing against my neighbor. Otherwise, we are somewhat trying to pretend. We're trying to be what we are not, and we can fool everyone. We can go online, we can go on the news and say, I totally forgive this person of that person, and maybe everyone who will see us online on the news will perhaps believe it. But if in our heart we have not yet, we cannot fool ourselves, we cannot fool our conscience, and God resides in our conscience. The God within us is right there in our conscience, because there it is, the divine laws. So there is no need to pretend to be what we are not. We are still in pain, we are still hurt. The offense, the injury in our heart is still there. We still feel the pain, we still have the scar right there. And every time that you look at that scar, it brings us a negative sentiment towards the perpetrator. But it is important that we are on the process of liberation, of freeing ourselves. And that's where we can say that the teachings of Christ are indeed the salvation. It releases us from suffering because it releases us from the pain that we hold because we are not truly able to forgive. If we today are not able to say, I have nothing against my neighbor, wonderful. But if we were not, we don't need to pretend, we don't need to lie. But we need to accept that we need to work in that direction, towards that direction, to eventually completely free our hearts from resentment. Not to forget. Some will say that to forgive is to forget. I totally disagree. If it happened to us, there was a reason behind all that. Might as well we learn that lesson and leave the resentment, leave the pain behind. You still remember that what happened, but not remember what happened with anger, with resentment, with desire, or when of any ill thoughts towards anyone. Okay, comments?
When it, when he talks about thought here, yesterday we had a wonderful lecture by Dr. Sonia Doi that she talked about the perispirit and how it relates to our physical body, to the cosmic fluid. I highly recommend for those that missed that if you go and watch it on the we have it on our web on our YouTube page on under USSF Talks. And she said something about thoughts that I thought it was very interesting, right? When he says here, "For you are responsible for your thoughts," then she says that the thoughts are neutral. The energy behind the thoughts is what makes the difference, right? So it goes with what Elmo was saying, right? To have the thought of what happened to you, that's not the issue. The energy or the vibration you put on that thought, positive, negative, or neutral, is what's going to make the difference and what's going to affect how the thought travels to others, right? So I thought it was an interesting point there yesterday.
Yeah. I think if we keep remembering, if the thought of something of the past keeps coming back into us, I think is a pretty good clue that we are still dealing with it. That as much as you want it to be over in terms of pain, in terms of being completely able to forgive, if it keeps coming back to us, you keep thinking of those things, it's likely because you have to work on it. And then comes what you're saying, which is very important. What kind of sentiment am I associating with those thoughts that comes back into me? Is it a negative thing? Is it an angry thing? Is it a thing that I have to work on it and make myself better? But yeah, try to attach a good sentiment to those thoughts, and then you'll be able to completely free ourselves of any negativity.
Mm.
So it's not that you don't remember things anymore, that completely forget them, but you don't think of it anymore because you really left it behind. Now you completely forgive, you're completely free of resentments. It doesn't hurt you anymore at all. So it's almost like it's forgiven because you don't think of it anymore. There is no need to think of it anymore. But if the thought keeps coming back to you, it's a good it's a good clue that you still have to work on it. Okay, anybody else? Okay, number
Okay.
15.
Okay. 15. To forgive your enemies is to ask forgiveness for yourself. To forgive one's friends is to give them proof of friendship. To forgive injuries is to show that we are getting better. Therefore, do forgive, dear friends, so that God will forgive you. Because if you are hard, demanding, and inflexible, if you are rigorous even for a slight offense, how do you want God to forget that every day you yourself have the greatest need of indulgence? Ah, woe to those who say, I shall never forgive. But thus they are proclaiming their own condemnation. Moreover, who knows if, looking deep inside yourself, you were not the aggressor? Who knows if in this fight that begins as a prick but escalates into a full scale rupture, you have not started it by striking the first blow. If you did not let escape a hurtful remark, if you have failed to use the necessary moderation, no doubt your opponent is wrong for being too successful. But this is another reason for you to be indulgent and not deserve the reproach that you address to him or her. Suppose that you were really offended in a circumstance. Who can say that you did not inflame it through reprisals and that you did not degenerate it into a serious quarrel which could have easily been forgotten if it was up to you to prevent it from happening? But you didn't. You are guilty. Finally, let us admit that you have absolutely no reproach to make yourself. You will have even more merit for being merciful. However, there are two very different ways of forgiving. There is forgiveness from the lips and forgiveness from the heart. Many people say of their adversary, I forgive him or her, while internally deriving a secret pleasure from the misfortunes experienced by the latter, saying to themselves that he or she has only got what they deserve. How many say, I forgive, and then add, but I will never be reconciled. I will never see this person again in my life. Is this forgiveness according to the gospel? No. True forgiveness, Christian forgiveness, is the one that casts a veil over the past. It is the only one which will be taken into account because God is not satisfied with appearances. God searches the bottom of our hearts and the most secret thoughts. God cannot be fooled by words and vain stimulations. A complete and absolute forgiveness of injuries is characteristic of great souls. Bitterness being always a sign of debasement and inferiority. Remember that, that true forgiveness is found more in deeds than in words. The Apostle Paul.
Thank you. So to forgive your enemies is to ask forgiveness for yourself. We can take that in two different ways. To forgive our to forgive our enemies is a way of us to not let to carry the pain of the injuries of the past with us any longer. In the sense that this forgiveness is now a a key that open the prison that we incarcerate ourselves without desire for revenge, without desire to see the perpetrator to suffer as much as we had suffered, And we see, especially in leadership meetings, that for as long as you keep yourself inside of that prison, there is no limit. We ask our friends who come to speak with us, who are, according to their own minds, in their right to seek revenge, in the right to make justice. And when we ask when enough is enough, and the answer is basically there is no limit, because it's not the pain that the author is suffering, but it's the pain that I am really suffering. And the pain that the author is suffering does not minimize my pain. What I'm doing to him is never equal to what I am feeling, because I can only feel what I am feeling, not what the other guy is feeling. I will never be able to measure his pain and to say, oh yeah, now we are equal. My pain will always be superior because I can only feel my own pain. So it is a liberation to forgive our enemies, because now you free yourself from that pain. Because by seeking revenge, by making the other one suffer, does not relieve your pain. Because you cannot feel our neighbor's pain to say, oh, it's equal to mine now, or even greater than mine now. Now I'm happy, now I can put an end to it. So except for forgiveness, we cannot free ourselves from that miserable incarceration that we place ourselves into. So that is one way. And the other way that forgiveness your enemies is to ask for forgiveness for yourself is because if you believe in cause and effect, if you believe that nothing happens by chance, it is likely that we are having an opportunity to make amends with the divine laws for things of the past. And if I'm not able to forgive, it is because we still feel in ourselves that we are not able to recognize our own mistakes of the past. You're not able to surrender to the fact that what we have done in the past, that is the cause of what I am suffering now, is still some kind of unfair, is still some kind of God is against me, or these people are against me. We have not make adjustment with the divine laws to recognize that what I have done is a mistake, and I am now dealing with the consequences of my past. So I forgive everything that was done again, that is being done against me, or that was done against me, because I want to be forgiven for the things that I have done myself. And if I cannot forgive those who are doing to me what I have done to others, then how can I ask for forgiveness if I myself cannot do it? Which is very clear in the parable, that Jesus parable, when the master forgives a very small debit of one of his servants, and the same servant are not able to forgive even a smaller debt of someone who wronged him. So that servant who was uh, previously forgiven by the master is now taken back in front of the master, and the master tell him, how can you do not forgive your friend who owes a lot less than you owe me, and you come and ask me for forgiveness? Now you go and you have to pay me everything that you owe me. So our ability to forgiveness generates forgiveness to ourselves. Our ability to forgiveness give us the right to ask for forgiveness. Of course, we're talking about real forgiveness, true forgiveness. Yeah, right. So it's two ways in which forgiveness of our enemies is to get forgiveness to ourselves. One, our direct action, we doing it, and the other one come from um, divine beneficence. Um, Another thing with the issue of forgiveness that is directly related again to our pride is that the pride kind of makes us a little bit blind of ourselves, of our defects, of our mistakes, of our wrongdoings. And you are very quick to point fingers to attack those who have done something that you consider to be offensive towards us. And in a more detailed analysis of the whole fact, in a or let's say for one third party who had nothing to do, let's say that Joan and I have a quarrel when we are being aggressive towards one another, and so right as a third party watching it from afar, and I go to her and I start complaining about Joan, and she's being neutral, shows me the real fault, to say, oh, but don't you see here? You're the one who started this whole thing. How embarrassing that would be
Mm.
for me. Because with my pride, I'm blind of my own aggression, of how I can be aggressive. But when someone give back what I am sending out, I react.
Mm.
And it leads to the topic that very often what we see in others is pretty much a reflection of what we have within ourselves. That we see the exterior pretty much is a reflection of our interior. And the bombardment that I'm sending towards João right now, and it's nothing more a reflect of seeing in João what I have within myself. And a third party can look at it from outside, not emotionally involved with the quarrel, can see when you are complaining, but you're the one who started the whole thing. You are here accusing him of the things that you are doing yourself. How embarrassing, how painful that me to have to accept that fact, or even worse, do not accept a fact. Because with full of pride, maybe when she come to me and show me the reality and show the facts, I may not accept, I may not take it. Because I'm so full of pride and I'm completely blind, and I will not accept the reality that it is my fault, that I started, that I am the aggressor. And I mean, we see that quite often. You see that every day, that individuals absolutely rejecting the truth, sometimes even knowing that it's false, but out of pride. And how long are we going to perpetuate um, in that system, right?
Mm.
What else here? Now, Paul of Tarsus is talking of two types of forgiveness, which in reality, I would say one is a pseudo forgiveness and one is true forgiveness. Uh, the first type I would call a pseudo forgiveness, I'm not gonna say it's true forgiveness, is the one out of the lips, is the one that we go in the media, that you go into WhatsApp and let everyone knows that how great I am, how Christian I am, and I do forgive Jean for everything he said about me, but inside me, I'm brewing with anger and desire for revenge. There is no forgiveness there. There is a falsehood, there is a pseudo forgiveness. And in other ways, we use that pseudo forgiveness as a mean to elevate ourselves, to put myself above the other, is to show, you see how good I am, how great I am, trying to put ourselves on a pedestal where we do not belong, and even worse, try to diminish the other. It's really an aggression. Our forgiveness, or pseudo forgiveness, is in reality an aggression. Is in a way to attack, is a way to belittle um, the one that we have a quarrel, the one that we feel had offended us somehow. And I keep saying that we feel that we were offended. Very often, again, out of pride, we feel that are offended by the person who said or who did had absolutely no intention to be offensive at all, have no intention absolutely to put us down in any way, but we receive it as an offense. So many times, yes, the other party had the intention to be offensive, to cause injury or anything like that, but very often out of pride, the other party not even know what we are talking about, have no intention to cause any harm, had no intention to cause an offense, but we are so sensitive in some areas that you feel offended by what other individuals say. And then, of course, there is the true offense, the one that comes from the heart, the one that Christ teaches us, the one that says over here, cast a veil over the past. But again, I remind you, not that you forget events, because you have a memory, you'll be able to forget things, but you don't keep bringing it back because you are completely free. It does not affect you in any way. Therefore, you have no need to keep bringing it to your mind because there is no issue to be resolved any longer. It's all done. It's all resolved. And that's what it means when he says to cast the veil of the past. Okay, comments?
It's always good to remember that that phrase from Francis Xavier again, right? That when you hate someone, you send the copy and you keep the original, right?
Yes.
Because in the end, you are hurting yourself when you do not forgive. For the other, it may make absolute no difference. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they're not even aware of it. But you are only hurting yourself and causing injury to yourself, right?
Mm.
That's right. And that's, I think, the importance of being self-critical and self-analyzing ourselves. And when we feel that we're being offended, to see, why am I feeling being offended? What would be in that person interest to offend me, to hurt me, to try anything to against me? Is it something within myself? Again, that I'm recognizing not what I have within myself is something that I have to work on. Because very often I think people who are very quick to defend themselves, very, very quick to feel attacked and have the need to attack back. Again, it's we reflect ourselves in the other. We ex- exteriorize all those things that we need to work on outside it into others and recognize what we had of harm bad inside ourselves. So every time that we feel that we're being individuals out there that feel being attacked all the time, being offended all the time, you have to be self-critical and evaluate why is that? What's going on over here?
Yeah, psychologically, we tend to see in others what we are ourselves, right? And that's that's an issue that creates problems, right? I remember, a colleague that worked with me many years ago, and he loved to, to conspire, to get people together to conspire against others, and at the same time, he used to think that everyone was conspiring against him, because that's the way he thinks. He thinks everyone else is doing the same, and that's a characteristic that is very common. We see in others what we are ourselves. So if we are, we like to act on our inferior tendencies, we tend to think that all others do the same, right? And that's an issue that we have to self-analyze, to deal with it ourselves, which is hard, of course, but uh, it goes here on the forgiveness also. Right?
Yeah, it's hard for us to deal with ourselves, but it's very hard to have a relationship with individuals like that as well. Because those individuals, they only bring the negative. They bombard us with negative. They come to us. I mean, I have co-work like that. I think always to tell something negative about someone else. You just cannot take it. Comes to a point that you cannot take it anymore. It's very difficult to deal with individuals like that as well. They not only have all those negative energies to deal with, they like to share them along. Ah, do you see that guy, those people doing as wrong, saying over there, asking others to join him in conspiracy? It's very difficult because you don't want to be nasty to that person as well, but there is a limit that we can take, how much we can take as well. And we should protect ourselves from the bombardment of negative energies as well. Because unlike Francis Cândido Xavier, we are a lot more vulnerable. He was fully protected by his own merit, but we are vulnerable. We have to be careful. We may end up following those conspirators, and we see today what's happening. The consequence can be tragic.
Going back to him, right? Like he said, if what they say about me, they are correct, there is nothing I can say. If what they say about me is a lie, they don't deserve my answer. So I rather keep quiet.
Right. Okay. Move on.
I remember a story in, I believe it was Endearing Gems of forgiving. Was about a lady that I believe she had children and her husband, and she comes to him and tells him, um, I've had it. I've forgiven uh, my husband and the children, and it still continues and it continues. And he said, like they say here, that you forgive 7 times, 70 times. And he said, well, you have way more time to forgive. You have a whole lot still to forgive. And that brings to mind that, you have to be patient with, especially family. And you have to find in your heart, with strength in your heart, that you have to be bigger than that you have to forgive for each offense. Could you imagine 400 and whatever it is, 490 times? It is a lot, but it does come to what we're studying here. We have to find a way to forgive, and through help of prayer and indulgence, and understand that we will need that too. Do we want to be forgiven? I surely do. So if you want to be forgiven, you forgive. So
Yeah, to forgive without limit.
yeah,
That it does not means that we will not use the opportunity to to correct when we are in the position to make those corrects, that you not condone the aggressor, that you not go along with any kind of aggression, but that we forgive when it happens. Meaning that, especially with family members, very often they're in a position to be proactive in assistance. Okay. And sometimes to assist, to be helpful, may not be very pleasant for that person. Okay. But when you do with the true, sincere intention of being helpful or helping someone to live some kind of vice, not talking about only um, vices of alcohol or drugs, but in the general vice, moral vices as well. Someone who is, the example that John's OKV always find that others are conspiring against oneself, that something that needs correction, and you approach with that intention. If you are in a position to do so, we do it, but in a forgiving way. We do being indulgent. We're going to read right now here. It's extremely important. Indulgence must go together, perhaps even before forgiveness
Yeah.
in this process. But again, not to say, "Oh, I forgive and let go."
Mm.
Perhaps not. I forgive, but you need to make a correction here. I forgive, but you should not do that again.
Right.
Simple thing. If you're 5 years old, has a tendency of spilling the milk on the floor for fun, you're going to create a correction. You're going to find ways to correct, to educate. You're not going to be angry and unforgiving toward the 5 years old. You recognize that's someone in the process of learning that needs to go through some experience to be understand that this is not correct. And maybe the experience for that 5 years old may be not very pleasant for him or her.
Mm.
5 minutes timeout. The 5 minutes for a 5 years old may feel like an eternity. You do so out of the necessity to correct. The same way that we adults have our vices, our wrongdoings, that if you're not in the position of offer them the opportunity for correction, we will do so, but not out of anger, not out of hate.
Thank you, Alma. Okay, so we'll do indulgence now. 16. Spiritist, we want to talk to you today about indulgence, a feeling so sweet and so fraternal that every human should have toward their brothers and sisters, but which only very few put into practice. True indulgence does not see the faults in others, or if it sees them, it is careful not to speak about or to expose them. On the contrary, it hides them so that they are known only to oneself. And if someone's malevolence discovers them, an indulgent person always has an excuse ready to remedy them. That is a plausible, serious excuse, and never one that instead to mitigating a fault actually highlights it with treacherous duplicity. Indulgence never occupies itself with the wrongdoers of others, unless this is done to render a service. Yet it takes care to mitigate them as much as possible. It makes no shocking observations, utters no reproaches,
Yeah, there it is.
only advice, which is more often veiled. When you throw criticism, what should be the consequences of your words? Would it be that you yourself, who blame, would not have done what you reproach? Or could it be that you are better than the one culprit. Humans, when will you judge your own hearts, your own thoughts, your own actions, instead of caring about what your brothers and sisters are doing? When will you direct your stern eyes only to yourselves? Therefore, be stern with yourself, but indulgent with others. Think of the one which judges in last instance, which can see the secret thoughts of each heart, and which often excuses the faults you blame in others, or condemns those you excuse, because God knows the motive behind all actions, and you yourself, who so loudly shout anathema, would perhaps have made more serious mistakes. Be indulgent, dear friends, because indulgence attracts, soothes, and rectifies, whereas stern rigor discourages, drives away, and inflames. Joseph, protect the spirit.
Okay, so the word indulgence is a little bit complex one. Um, it almost have a somewhat negative flavor in some aspects, like where you also say indulge yourself. You go, let's say, to a all you can eat buffet and say indulge yourself. Feel free with your gluttony. Do eat as much as you want. Have no limitations. It's personally a negative connotation of the word self-indulgence. Chocolate is my self-indulgent. So I allow myself to eat as much chocolate as I want, and then I restrict myself from other things. Again, another, at least in my way of seeing, a somewhat negative connotation to the word indulgence. In the Catholic religion is a way of is a way of to reduce the amount of punishment that one would have to undergo for their sins. So the church being, or the priests being a representative of Christ on earth, would have the authority to give indulgence to individuals. Naturally, those individuals would have to go to the confessionary, would have to confess their sins, would have to go ahead and fulfill the required penitence. Very often be to pray some kind of prayers few times a day and stuff like that. And once you do that as the authority of the church, you have reduced your time of punishment for this or that sin. And of course, we in Spiritism, we see indulgence in a very different way, which also one of the cinnamon, the definition that we see if you go into the dictionary, which is the ability to understand, to be merciful towards the difficulties, the others, towards the vices, the limitation of others, to be indulgent when we speak as one of the three legs of charity that according to Christ's benevolence, indulgence, and forgiveness, right?
Mm.
Is exactly that ability to understand, to be merciful to the limitations, to the vices, to the difficulties of others, to be patient with others. That is the kind of indulgence that we are talking about here. And again, that's an example that I have said. I can go back to it. If I'm, let's say, in my job, I'm doing something wrong. Let's say in my notes, my objectives are not good. And my boss, my supervisor calls me in the office, close the door, and say, I'm checking your notes over here and see in this note, your objective is deficient. In this here, your objective is deficient. In this here, your objective is deficient. You need to improve on that. I will accept, very good, no problem. But if my boss, my superior, come in the middle of the hallway in our meetings with all the other PAs and the nurses and the PACs and everybody and put, Elmo, don't you see what you're doing over here? Look at your notes, look at your objectives. You're very deficient in this and this and this and that. Can you see that? I'll definitely be offended. Naturally, what that my superior is being is having lack of indulgence. On the first example, he's being indulgent, that he is pointing exactly to where the problem is. He's not throwing me a bunch of complaints. He's not putting me down anyway. He's showing to me and describing to me in a very objective way what is the problem, where I have to work on it in the privacy of the office. Much easier for me to accept because my at that point I can surrender my pride because it's in the closed doors, right? So that in that first example, my superior is being indulgent towards me. He's doing the right way. He's not letting go of a mistake that is important that needs correction, but it's addressing in a very proper, merciful way. And the second way is the really mean way of doing it. We know if there is a word that opposes indulgence in this case here. I don't know what the word would be. Arrogant, and I don't know what it would be. That is exposing me in public, throwing my mistakes over there, knowing that because we all have pride, that would be painful for me to receive. So indulgence is not only to not see the fault of others. But more important, true indulgence does not see the faults in others, again here, or if it sees them, it is careful not to speak about them, not to expose them. But, but later on, he goes further and say that when there is a need to address it, you address it um, with mercy, so to say, and address exactly what is the negative there. But on top of that, you bring the positive as well. So, Elmo, your objective is really bad. I don't like need to improve on that one. But on the subjective is it. On the physical examination is really good. On this one, it's excellent. So the same way that it's show the problem, it also maximizes the goodness. This is the true indulgence, that you don't let the person feeling bad for something that needs work, but also makes you feel good of the things that we are doing well, especially in the world that we live today, especially we being so prideful that as we are, that we must recognize that we are prideful. And since we want to do to others, proactive, do to others, what would like to be done toward ourselves, indulgence is key to fulfill this this golden rule, to do to others what would like to be done to ourselves in the same situation. We don't like to be exposed in public. We don't like someone just bombarded us with our negative, but with our negative, showing them because it is necessary, because it's proper, we also bring the positive, what you're doing down, so it can balance out. It's like buffer, you don't feel so bad, and you are able to make corrections and continue to move on. So indulgence never occupies itself with the wrongdoing of others unless it is done to render a service. Now, when my boss calls me and show my bad notes, it's something that needs corrected. It's something that needs to be done. But if my boss is calling me to sometimes something that does not need correction, then it's my own problem. He just wanted to pick on me. That's the lack of indulgence. So when you're gonna point out the vices, the mistakes, the errors of others, it needs to be for good reason, it has to be to a good cause. Again, going back to Socrates, speak only, one, if it's true, two, if it's good, three, if it's useful. So if it's not the truth, it's not good, and it's important, if it's not useful, shut up. No need, be indulgent. Because in those you only speak to render service. And to render service, that means something that is true, that is good, that's useful.
Elmo, a question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell the boss after he slanders you in a way of your work? What would you tell him at that moment? Or when you have the moment to speak to him, would you correct him or you would defend yourself? Yes, you forgive, but then anything else could be done, it should be done.
In which situation? A closed door or screaming
Yes,
at me in
in the
public?
in the in the closed door, not in front of coworkers, of course. I don't think that's, but in closed doors, what would you say?
Well, the first thing,
Confront him?
the first thing is to have a very truthful analysis of what's being said. It is true. Yeah, my notes are not good. I have to make correction. Then, the first thing is accept your part in it.
Mhm.
And if the boss bring it in the room, do the indulgent way, what we're gonna tell you, yeah, you are right. I will make the appropriate correction. Thanks to point that out to me.
Right.
What else could we could we say?
And if it's not so,
What if it's not so?
right.
If 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 he is making a mistake that my notes are not bad, that could be the examples, right? Maybe he brings me in the room with all the best intentions of make correction and show me things, and I look at it and say, no, this is the proper way to do it. I can show you. I can open. There are books that show us how to write soap note. Here, these objectives. My objectives is in accordance with this book. My objectives are according with that book. My objectives is in
Mhm.
accordance with this and that. So there is no error in my part here,
Okay.
right? If I'm gonna tell my boss that he is wrong and I'm right, I have to show evidence that that's
Okay.
the case.
Okay.
And if he's doing it as a honest mistake, he will also recognize and say, "Oh yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Never mind, right?"
Hmm.
And that would it take to the point of view that true individuals reasonable that are not have a personal quarrel and things like that. That it's done the proper professional setting. I recognize my mistake. I'll make correction, or I don't think there's a mistake here. I'm gonna show it to you there is not a mistake here. I'm gonna show it to you there is not a mistake here,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Now, in the second scenario, I think it's more difficult because now that superior has displayed a very serious
Hmm.
behavior, not only personal, moral, but also professional, and it could escalate to human resources and all kinds of things. It's up to me to go and ahead and bring this guy to human resources and this and that. But personally, I would try to speak with with that superior. Say, you may be right when you show me all those things, but couldn't you bring me to your room? Couldn't you have this conversation private? I mean, I am a very private person. I'm willing to recognize my errors. I just don't like to be placed out there and to be screamed at in public like that. If it's not a personal quarrel, it's not something personal against me. That that professional perhaps would understand and make the appropriate correction as well.
Mm. Okay.
But that in the second scenario demonstrated that the person who has some serious problem that needs to be dealt with, not only personal but also in a work relationship. It's a serious aggravation, even that could be led to some serious reproachment by human resources and everything else.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Alma.
But the first thing is, I mean, if you're wrong, the first thing I have to do is recognize that you're wrong. Without that, you have absolutely no foundation to stand on. If you make a mistake and you don't recognize it's a mistake that is being presented to you, you have absolutely no foundation to stand on. Being that the guy is being indulgent to you, being that the guy is screaming, being unfair to you, if you are wrong, you are wrong, period. You must recognize. The other may be wrong too. But his wrong does not, or her wrong, does not eliminate your wrong. Now you have two wrongs.
Mm.
And you must recognize you're being wrong before anything else.
Okay.
Which again, our pride may blind us. Our pride may limit our ability to be reasonable. Our pride may limit our ability to detach emotion to from reasons. And that's key. You must detach emotion from reasons. And reasons must always prevail over anything else. If we allow emotions to prevail over reason, we are done. We are lost.
Right. Okay.
And that is very hard to do, especially when it comes to family affairs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Alma. Alma cleared it up very well. Thank you.
Elmo, general
Yep,
question.
sure.
When there are conflicting situations that do arise, when indulgence, of course, is maybe the proper route to go, should one immediately handle it, or should one just chill, cool out, and assess, and then decide the course of action? I've always had questions about that because it could be a very volatile situation, but if you completely explode in the moment, that's not indulgence at all. Would you mind maybe giving some insights on that, please? Thank you.
Um, Let me see if I completely understood your question and your comment here. Let's assume the scenario B, the second scenario, and my boss decides to expose my mistake in public and is screaming out loud for everybody else, and I feel somewhat offended by it and react at the same level of aggression, of ignorance. You're right. I'm just going to start a little war that I lower myself to the level of the aggressor, and now things are out of control, right? So the first thing is allow time. Do not allow your passion, do not allow your emotions. Again, emotions should not override reason. Do not allow your emotions to overtake reason and say that that's not the right to. If I don't want my boss to be talking to me out loud in public, why do I want to be speaking out loud to my boss in public? I'm not practicing the golden rule. Do to others only what you'd like others to do to you in the same situation. So perhaps I should speak to my boss in public, in private, in private, in a room and say, that was really inappropriate that you have to scream out loud and show all those things in public. It's not their business. They don't have to deal with that. I have to deal with this. And it's much easier for me to accept what you are saying, which is right. I went looking, I saw it's right, but it didn't have to be out loud to public. I'll ask you, please don't do that again, because maybe I have to take actions against it because I did this. is really an aggression towards me more than trying to be corrective of my mistake. But yeah, let things cool off. Do not retaliate immediately, because then you just level yourself at the level of the aggressor, which is very hard because of our pride. Because when you say, I'm not going to let all these people around here see that I am a little coward, that I don't have the balls to react, to defy the aggression of my superior, that I'm a chicken, right? You need to be very self-assured, to not react immediately, to allow reason to prevail.
Thank you so
Again, it's how pride really hurts us, and how pride is a really difficult thing for us to deal with. Because once the guy says something in public, now not only we feel offended, but we feel the need to react. You feel they needed to give back, because you don't want anybody around to think that I'm a little chicken, that I'm a little coward, that people can say whatever they want to say about me, and I don't have the courage to react. And this collection of my pride keeps going and going and going, and gives me permission to be just as a brute as my boss has been a brute with me. So yeah, if you allow reason to prevail, we'd let the guy do his stupidity over there. We would not follow him on that pathway. But when the time is proper, in the privacy, again, we want to be indulgent. If it was not indulgent to us, we want to be indulgent to them, and have a conversation private.
Thank you so much. Very helpful.
Yeah, I think react immediately is most of the time not a good idea. Of course, there is exception to the rules. I cannot think of one right now. But most of the time, to allow things to cool off is the proper way, if our pride allow us to do so. Because very often we feel that you need to shout to others that you are not cowards, that we are not going to take it. I don't have to take this. I'm not going to take this, and we embarrass ourselves even more.
Thank you, Allan.
But who among us is really able to do it?
Yeah.
Who among us have leveled ourselves to the level of Christianity that we are really able to put in practice what we are saying here? And each one has to respond to oneself, of course.
It's interesting, Amo, that I know we have only 4 minutes, so let's talk a
Seriously?
little bit about yeah.
So sorry.
Yeah, and the meaning of indulgence, if you look in the dictionary, right? It of course it in the sense that we use in Spiritism is correct, but there are many others that go in the direction of what you said, right? For instance, it says a favor or privilege, the grant of certain religious liberties to dissenters and Roman Catholics, the remission of punishment still due, especially in purgatory, for a sin that has been sacramentally absolved, and an extension of time for the payment of a debt, of the performance of a duty. So a lot of the meanings of indulgence are different from what we use here, right? But of course, how we use here is also the correct meaning. But I find it interesting because if you talk about indulgence, which you raised the point very well, people, if they don't really understand what is behind what we are saying, they may get the wrong impression.
No, that's why I have to start by going back with this meaning of this word, that in many of the definitions that you see over there, it's actually something negative, right? Be indulgent in your, eating, gluttony over here, be indulgent with chocolates. And if you don't if you say, indulgence is one of three legs of charity, it's got to be something above that, and definitely above what is used in the Catholic Church. There's giving a break from or relieve someone from their responsibilities with the divine laws, that the church had that authority to make
Wow.
judgment and relieve someone from the responsibilities with the divine laws.
They were selling indulgences, right?
That was the biggest problem. That's correct.
Yeah.
Amazing. I guess the discussion was very good. I had no idea it was that late already.
Yeah, right. Everyone fast.
We will continue next month.
Mhm.
Yeah. So for next Sunday, we are going to continue the study of On the Way to the Light, and I think that's it, right? On this Saturday, we have an interesting lecture by Alvaro Mordecai. He has been with us a couple of times, and he's going to talk about the importance of the letters of Paul on our present days. At the United States Spiritist Federation talk on Saturday, which should be very interesting also. Okay.
So yesterday lecture is on SGNY, no?
Yes, if you go to
Also.
SGNY YouTube, yeah, you see that there is a playlist called USSF Talks, and it's
Okay.
there. And I really
Yeah, I wanna
recommend
see.
because it's very good. She's very good, right?
Yes,
she's not
yes.
she's very knowledgeable, and the subject very spirit, and she talks about mental body and the physical body, the spiritual body, and the differences, and what is exactly which. And she uses a lot of the evolution into worlds and between heaven and earth. So yeah, I think it's really worth
Oh, definitely.
watching.
I'd have to see that. I didn't see the lecture, but I know her, and I'd strongly suggest lecture on, if whoever missed is interested in the perispirit, to check it.
Yeah.
All right. Our final prayer.
Yeah.
Carol.
Yes. Thank you, Alma. Thank you, John,
Thank you.
and everyone. Excellent. Infinite Creator, Supreme Intelligence, all goodness and grace, we are grateful to be together today for our studies of the Gospel according to Spiritism, our topics being forgiveness and indulgence. We are grateful to be together to share in the teachings, to have a deeper understanding of the meaning and the topics, especially of indulgence. We are grateful to know that we can always change. We can always change our attitude, and we can reflect upon this by the use of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a benefit not only to the other, but to ourselves especially. We must forgive 70 times 7, or at least as much as we can each time the offense is done to us. May we use the golden rule to be applied when necessary. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the mentors, the helpers, the teachers who are allowing us to move forward in a positive way, to bring forth goodness in our daily lives, and to be of service, to participate when we need to in indulgence and forgiveness. For this, we are truly grateful for the blessings that we have received today. During the week, may we continue with our prayers, with our studies, and with our mindfulness. And may we receive the love, the light, and the healings of the Christ's light within us. May we be of service, may we be charitable, and may we be forgiving in our actions. We go forth now this week, and we ask to be guided and to be mindful of the lessons learned. May we use what we have received today to benefit others on the path. May we share our studies of Spiritism with others who are able to be receptive as we do so in a mindful way. We close now and humbly ask to receive the love, the light, and peace of Christ within us. We go forth now to share with others these blessings. Go forth now as beacons of light. Go forth now in peace. So be it.